Hello, everyone. Welcome back from the break. And we are going to start with our agricultural uses for urine fertilizer section of the summit. I would like to introduce our first presenter, which is Jenna Senecal. The title of her presentation is Dry Urine Fertilizer, a Field Report. Jenna Senecal is a resource engineer with a PhD in safe nutrient recovery from human urine, system and hygiene evaluation. She's now working on the commercialization of the urine drying technology. I would also just like to put a quick reminder out here that this section is really packed with exciting presentations. So to the presenters, please keep your presentations to 10 minutes because we've got a lot coming in this section. So without further ado, Jenna, you're up.
Great, thanks. So I'm a postdoc at the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, and that's where I did my PhD in co-developing the alkaline dehydration system, like what Tristan just presented in the previous session. And now we have a spin-off company called Sanitation 360, where we're working on trying to commercialize our system. And today I'm going to give you a quick overview as to what we've been doing in the field with our dried urine. So our goal from the university's perspective, where we're working, is to transfer our scientific knowledge into commercial products so that we can make going to the bathroom more sustainable. Specifically, our solution, as you've heard, is to convert urine into a dry fertilizer using stabilization and dehydration. As this process has been well explained in the last couple of days, I will hop over this and just dive into what we've been doing in the field. So this is our team, myself and Prithvi, who you also met yesterday, and also Björn Vinnerhos. We're all part of Sanitation 360. And at the same time, we work at SLU, where we do our research and development. We're also partnered with EOS Next, who help us take our hack together system and make it functional in a real life setting, and also make it a lot more beautiful and pleasant to use. Our company is also part of a business incubator called Science Park Gotland. So currently we have 2 installations going on. One of our installations is in southern Sweden, in Malmö, where we have this toilet, which is the urine diverting flush toilet, designed by EOS Next and made by Loffen. And then the urine comes into the bottom, and then we have heaters and a fan in order to evaporate it. And as you saw from Tristan's example, the energy consumption is still something that we're working with. So none of our systems have been optimized yet for energy consumption. We've been just trying to get our proof of concept out there. And so the systems run whether there's urine or not, so it can look quite bad sometimes. For instance, in Finland, we designed a system to receive 90 liters a day, but it received 3 liters a day. And so you can imagine our energy bill was quite high for not much. And that's a number that gets referenced quite a bit, unfortunately for us. So we're in the process of trying to automize our system and make it so that it's more smart, so that it turns on and off as needed. So this system was designed for a single toilet, and then on Gotland, we are looking at scaling the system up to be able to treat 300 liters a day. And so Gotland is a special place. It's an island in the middle of the Baltic Sea, and it is part of Sweden. And it's heavily impacted by the harmful algae blooms. And at the same time, there's water shortages on Gotland. So there's quite a big local drive in order to see change happening. So we got 3 million Swedish crowns for a 3-year project to implement our alkaline drying system. And we've partnered up with a local toilet rental company and a local brewer. Basically, we take the urine from the rental toilets, produce it into dry fertilizer, produce barley, and then have this local brewer to evaluate the quality of the grain that we're able to produce. So in the fall, we had winter 2021, we collected over 300 liters. And in the summer, we collected another 1,000 liters using these urinals. And that's in collaboration with Touchdown, the local toilet rental company. Next summer, we will scale this up to collect more urine and have also female urinals and retrofit some of the chemical toilets to be urine diverting as well. Basically, I would show up with my car and my trailer and pump out the urine and then take it home to process it, with the idea that eventually the drying process will happen inside my trailer. We're still in the process of designing the next system. This is what the urine looks like when it's done drying. It's big chunks and it's kind of like concrete but brittle. So with some hammering and smashing, I eventually get it into a more uniform product that had a final concentration of 8.2% nitrogen. So that's what we were able to achieve in this batch. We're currently in the lab reaching over 20% nitrogen concentration in the end product. So we're hoping to be able to get that into the field in the coming year. In terms of hygiene, we meet the US EPA and WHO guidelines. And as for pharmaceuticals, we have a PhD student named Natnal who's working on how we can put in technology during the treatment process so that we can remove these during the drying process. Then we applied the fertilizer and we got to use a special equipment that is like a big seed driller, but scaled down so that we can do smaller trials, but with actual conventional farming equipment. So we had the barley and the fertilizer going burrowed into the ground and covered at the same time. We had a little bit of issues with dust, as you can see from behind, even though we had mixed it with some damp sawdust. So this coming winter, we're looking at how to mechanize the process of getting from that chunky fertilizer to the powder, and then how to pelletize it so that it is an easier process to work with and also to minimize these losses. This is what it looked like. We had the 3 treatments: no fertilizer in the middle, mineral fertilizer, and then urine fertilizer. And you can see that the dried urine fertilizer, and it worked quite well. You can see it's nice and green, and it was similar height to the mineral fertilizer. And then we had a combine to harvest each of our treatments. We had 3 different fertilizer treatments and 6 replicates, extrapolated the data to give a harvest of number of kilograms per hectare. And you can see that the mineral fertilizer and the urine fertilizer were quite similar. And so was the protein content. The protein content, unfortunately, is a little high for beer production. We are aiming to be between 9 and 12%. This had nothing to do with our trial. In talking to other farmers on the island, everyone had high protein content in their barley due to the type of growing season we had. It was quite dry, and then at the very end, we had a lot of rain during the harvest time. So the brewer that we're working with is also having to struggle with this barley that's been produced this year. So right now we are waiting for the malted barley so that we can brew it and then assess the barley quality. We're also waiting on the leaf analysis to see what other variations there were within the treatments. And at the same time, we're preparing for next year's urine collection. So we're scaling up so that we can collect more than 300 liters per day. And we're doing that in collaboration with Touchdown to retrofit these toilets with inserts that are designed by EOS Next, so that you can turn these toilets into urine diverting toilets where nobody even sees it. It works with the same type of concept as the Laughlin Save toilet. And then we are also working with Urimat. They've produced dry urinals, and we're trying to get more of those installed on the island, which seems to be a popular way forward to the water shortage that we have here already. And that are the results that I have right now. In the coming years, we'll have more as the beer assessment and next year's growth trials come in. And to help us move forward with that, we also have a evaluation committee that's made up of various backgrounds, including an agronomist, in order to help us tailor our fertilizer to match the needs of the barley that's destined for beer production. With that, I'd like to say thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Jenna. Thanks for sharing that with us all. So next up, we have a presentation from John Culpepper. The title of this presentation is Human Urine, a Powerful Climate Change Mitigation Tool. John Culpepper has been actively involved in the organics upcycling world for over 4 decades. He recently co-founded an initiative called Compost for Good, with the goal of helping individuals, organizations, and communities recognize the value of upcycling all organics. John has designed an open source community scale in-vessel composter that is receiving attention from around the world. So we're going to be playing this presentation from John.
My name is John Culpepper, and I'm co-founder of Compost for Good. Our primary mission is to help individuals, businesses, organizations, and communities upcycle their food scraps and other organics. Our work is primarily focused at the community scale, somewhere between the backyard composter and large commercial industrial operations. We work with people from many parts of the United States and others around the world. As a side project, we're also working on ways to convert human urine from a carbon source into a biologically complete compost that could have a significant impact on climate mitigation. At Compost for Good, we are huge proponents of using human urine to replace commercial fertilizers. The use of urine as strictly fertilizer is a fantastic idea, and of course, many research groups around the world are working on ways to do this in an efficient and cost-effective way, and many of you are attending this conference. In this talk, I suggest that we can go a step beyond the idea of urine as fertilizer to create a local product that can stimulate the growth of soil microflora, and under the right land management conditions, have a significant impact on sequestering carbon from the atmosphere. How might this work? Well, urine contains a reasonably high amount of nitrogen. That nitrogen can be combined with a high carbon material to produce biologically complete US EPA Class A biosolids compost. Class A compost has no restriction on use. This means it can be used on vegetable gardens, children's playgrounds, lawns, sports fields, etc. When biologically complete compost or a slurry made from that compost is incorporated into soils, and under the right conditions, that compost or slurry inoculates soils with trillions of different types of soil microflora. These include bacteria, fungi, and many other types of microbes. In many plant soil systems, plants are capable of, and sometimes will, export up to 50% of the sugars that they produce through photosynthesis. Those sugars are pumped out of the roots and into the soil adjacent to the root. Now think about that. To what advantage would a plant expend all of the energy to produce photosynthates, primarily sugars, and then pump those high energy, high carbon compounds out through their root systems? As it turns out, soil microflora take advantage of this process to form a close association with plant roots, thereby benefiting from those photosynthetes. The plant is literally spending lots of energy to feed the trillions of different microbes that are close to their roots. The big star in the story, at least in terms of climate mitigation, is mycorrhizal fungi. Mycorrhizal fungi form symbiotic relationships with a wide variety of plants, fusing with plant roots, shunting water and nutrients into the plant, thereby increasing plant growth, which stimulates the plant to produce more photosynthates that further stimulate the growth and development of even more mycorrhizal fungi. This symbiotic relationship is so successful that in some soils, the biomass of the underground biota far exceeds the above ground biota. That biomass contains a huge amount of carbon that originally came from the atmosphere through the process of plant photosynthesis. In forest systems, mycorrhizal fungi can form structures that are many times more massive than the combined biomass in all of the trees to which they are attached. In fact, it is thought that the largest single organism on the planet is a mycorrhizal fungal mass named Pando, somewhere in Oregon, which covers almost 2,400 acres and is estimated to be several thousand years old. If land management practices are employed that do not oxidize the carbon in those managed soils, then both the living fraction of the underground mycorrhizal colonies and the decomposed portions of past colonies can lock atmospheric carbon away for hundreds to thousands of years. Many who study carbon sequestration put soils as the second largest carbon sink on the planet, the first being oceans. The difference is that it takes millennia to cycle carbon into carbonaceous rock within the oceans. But we can develop land management practices that turn soils from carbon emitters to carbon sinks in a few short years. It's worth mentioning other potential benefits from using diverted urine to make compost. The process of converting human urine into biologically complete compost can utilize low-quality wood products. There's currently a large amount of low-quality woody material from forestry operations that is left on the forest floor. Finding a market for this low-quality woody material could be a significant way to reduce forest floor fuel loading and therefore the frequency and severity of wildfires, along with providing additional jobs in the forestry industry. This process involves thermophilic composting. Many studies have shown that most pharmaceuticals are broken down into simpler, less harmful compounds in a high temperature environment. In our work, we have test results that suggest that the original nutrients contained in the urine are largely stabilized and maintained in the finished compost. Diverting urine from conventional wastewater treatment plants reduces the cost of operations to those plants, especially plants that have high phosphorus and nitrogen removal requirements. Our work has also shown that urine can be used to speed up the decomposition of food waste within in-vessel composting systems. Reducing the retention time of food scraps in composting systems, even by a little, could have a significant positive impact on those systems. At Compost for Good, we have developed a simple, safe, and effective approach using urine, water, and densified wood pellets, in which aerobic microbes bring the mix up to about 140 degrees Fahrenheit for more than 4 consecutive days. To date, in our experiments, we have processed over 500 gallons of urine into a beautiful finished compost that looks, smells, and feels just like compost that you might purchase from your local garden center. This is an example of some of that compost that we've produced, well over 2 cubic yards of this material. We have funding for a feasibility study to determine what it would take to build out a research and demonstration facility with the idea of processing approximately 25,000 gallons of urine per year. The goal of this build out will be to demonstrate the permitting requirements, at least in the state of New York, the logistics of urine collection and transport, and the economic viability of this process. If successful, we can imagine an economic incentive to motivate entrepreneurs to replicate this model in other places. Doing so could have a potentially positive impact on the forest industry, reduce the carbon footprint and cost of urine treatment in conventional wastewater treatment plants, reduce the environmental issues when pharmaceuticals from wastewater treatment plants enter water bodies, build soils and local circular economies, and mitigate the negative impact of climate change. We have developed a design for an open source community scale in-vessel composter that is free and available to anyone, along with an operating manual and other composting resources. There are currently 5 of these composters in operation in New York and New Jersey, with others being constructed around the world. We are currently working on refining our existing in-vessel composter design to make it easier to build and therefore even more affordable. It is in this in-vessel composter that we will turn the mix of urine, water, and wood pellets into finished compost. Please feel free to check our website posted at the end of this video, or contact us at compostforgood@80kaction.org. We thank the Rich Earth Institute for the excellent work that they're doing, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak at this conference. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks for that, John. Next up, we have Arthur Davis and Tatiana Schreiber from the Rich Earth
Good
Institute.
afternoon, I'm Katie.
And I'm John.
We would like to
Sorry
thank
about
the
this. Okay. Sorry, technical difficulties. So Arthur Davis and Tatiana Schreiber of the Rich Earth Institute are up next. Their presentation is titled Trialing Urine Fertilizer with New Crops and Application Methods. Arthur Davis is Rich Earth's program director, and he has assisted with many farm partnership research projects here in the Brattleboro area. He will report on Rich Earth's latest farm partnership research funded by the USDA SARE program, which included field trials on Vermont farms and lab experiments with drip fertigation. Tatiana Schreiber is the social research director here at the Rich Earth Institute, with a particular focus on working with and learning from farmers about their interests and needs. And also just a quick note to say that we will have Q&A at the end of this agriculture section. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And if there's any that are left unanswered, we'll address them after the final presentation. So here are Arthur and Tatiana.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Hey, Tatiana, we'll just switch. All righty. So, yeah, so I'm going to be talking about a study we did this past summer on drip irrigation, and then as part of that study, we also worked with a number of new farm partners in southern Vermont, right around where Rich Earth Institute is located, using urine on a bunch of new crops that we haven't done work with in the past, and then also using some different application methods than we have used in the past. So I'm going to be talking about all of that, and then Tatiana is going to talk about some of the things that we learned from the farmers that we worked with. So for the drip irrigation trial, we've been interested for quite a number of years about how urine might work in drip irrigation. And so we designed an experiment. We used 3 different types of drip emitters, kind of typical drip tape that you might see that a lot of farmers use, at least around here, and then a couple other types of emitters. You can see their pictures as well as their descriptions. And then we did 3 treatments for each of these types of emitters. One was just water as a control. One was a mix of urine and water, followed by a water rinse at the end. And then the other one, we did a bunch of water and then urine undiluted in the middle, and then water again at the end. So we're looking at trying to find an optimal way to prevent clogging, and especially when using hard water, because of the potential precipitation when hard water and urine are mixed together. So our first trial, we used a water that we made into a hardness of 124 parts per million, and then we did a kind of a phase 2 trial where we just about doubled that. So let's go on to the next. Where do I go to the next? There we go. Yeah, so our first trial, we did 5 consecutive irrigation sessions for each of our 9 emitter and method combinations. And we measured the amount of time that it took to apply 20 gallons of liquid. So, our idea was that if the rate of time that it took at the same pumping voltage to pump that pump the liquid through, then we would be looking at a clogging situation if it took longer. So as you can see in our first phase, we didn't really see much significant increase or decrease in the flow rate, and so that was really promising. We saw a little bit of a decrease in flow rate in the mix with the red line there, which was the take apart emitters, but nothing really significant. So that was great news as far as we were concerned. In the phase 2 trial, we increased the water hardness to about double of what it had been, and then we did a single longer run for each of the combinations. And as you can see, the mix did significantly worse than either our control or the kind of the water and then the urine and then the water method. So our takeaway from this is that by avoiding mixing in the drip irrigation system, then we are reducing the amount of precipitation that's happening, and therefore the amount of clogging of emitters that is going to happen. So for water, for our main takeaways from this, with a water hardness of up to 124 parts per million, which was our first phase 1, we can mix or not mix, and if a farmer had well water that was less hard than this, then they would be able to just mix and probably see good results throughout the season. But with harder water, we think that the alternating sequence to minimize mixing will yield better results in terms of the efficacy of the drip system. So there's that. This summer, to move on to kind of our collaborations that we did with new farmers this year, a couple highlights in here. We worked with a farm in Brattleboro who is growing greenhouse grown figs, and is really interested in using drip fertigation in the future, although this past season they did just do a hand application. We had another farm that fertilized cut flowers and hemp, and then we did another hemp farm that we actually did use drip fertigation in the field, using that sequencing method of water and then urine and then water, and that was really successful. So show a picture of that in a moment. And then we also did worked with a farmer growing sweet corn, when we used a kind of a subsurface side dressing of urine while the farmer was cultivating. So here's a picture of that. So here's John on his tractor, and you can see underneath the urine tank is in the back, and this was kind of a retrofitted tank that he already had. And there's a urine pipe running underneath the tractor, and right under that white bucket that's hanging, you can kind of see a stream of urine coming down. Here's a close-up of it. And so he was cultivating, knocking down weeds, and then the urine was being delivered right where the corn is, and then it was being buried immediately by soil. So we weren't having any kind of surface runoff, and I think trying to avoid volatilization by doing this as well. Here is a picture of our hemp field that we worked on, our urine tank, and you can see the drip irrigation system kind of just in the foreground from the rows, where we did this was the where you did that sequencing of water, then urine, then water, and we got great results. And just here's a picture of the figs in their greenhouse. And as I mentioned, they were hand applied this year, but we're looking at setting up drip irrigation in the future. So I'm going to pass it over to Tatiana now, and she's going to talk about some of the interviews with our farm partners about their experience.
Yeah, so we interviewed 5 farmers in late summer to find out what they were experiencing and observing. And as Arthur said, these are the 5 farmers, 5 farms, and then we had more than 5 farmers because some of them were doing 2 different things. Like on Tappaloo Guilds, we had one person doing the flowers and one was doing the hemp, etc. And this is a picture of me talking to Hannah Jenkins of Tappaloo Guilds about her cut flowers. She trialed urine fertilizer on amaranth, which is in the front there, and zinnias and celosia. And I just wanted to show you some of the kinds of things people said. I asked a range of questions, and one of them was, why did you want to participate? They had a range of reasons, from closing loops and reducing external inputs to satisfying their own curiosities. Like Hannah said, one of the things for me is to look at things that may be defined or understood as waste and thinking about how we can reclaim things that we might label as wasteful and then make them useful again. And Pete at Elmley Farm said I'm really keen on the process of putting manure or urine or something like that on pasture. If we can keep a resource out of the Connecticut River, all the better. And he also mentioned that because it's an educational farm, he has a little more time to experiment. And then I asked, how did you decide? And we brainstormed with farmers at the beginning of the project about their potential ideas, and then worked with them individually to hone their trial designs. And then I asked them how the collaboration went, and most of them were quite satisfied. Andy at Tappaloo said there seemed to be an understanding of what summer looks like for farmers, so we didn't have to think about too much about the basics. Arthur came out and helped them, and they found that collaboration worked pretty well. And Adam pointed out, learning is expensive, it takes time and effort. So we're trying to work out a system that minimizes my effort, but gets results, and it's fun. In order for it to work, it has to be profitable. I want there to be some benefit without just spending time. And Arthur and Abe were very conscientious of that, didn't have a lot of complaints. So he was very happy with the collaboration. And in terms of the results, I asked people what they were seeing at that point. And Ashlyn, the person who was doing the figs, said, what I'm seeing is a lot of success in the sections that are urine treated. They have the heaviest fruit set, the best growth. We haven't gotten to ripe fruit yet. At that point, she hadn't. But so far, she said, it's spectacular. There's fruit all the way down. So she's really happy. And she said that she had difficulty getting fruits to ripen in time last year, the figs. But this year they were ripening much earlier, and she was seeing more fruit on those that were urine fertilized. And then Pete, who did the hay, estimated he had about a 20% higher yield on his first cutting. And the other farmers were seeing comparable results to their regular fertilizer. But we haven't done the final interviews yet, so we'll see how things actually work out. And then this is Pete's hay field. I don't know if you could see how well you can see that, but the field on the half of the field to the right is the urine fertilized. And he took this from a drone, and it's a little greener on the right side. And all the farmers in the project felt strongly. So I asked them how did they talk to people about it? What were their reactions? And Ashlyn said, I'm sure that it will be an issue for some people, but I think the realities of food growing and where fertility comes from have to be a little bit more accepted if we want to eat and survive. We have to be a little more open as a general public. And as farmers, it's really helpful when we're transparent. And John said, I'm not shy. I think it's a good idea. And so I would just, I'd probably come from a place of saying, yeah, I think this is a great thing. I'm glad to be part of a project trying to figure out how to use this thing. We're just sending down the drain. We got to change. We got to start rethinking how we source our fertilizers and, everything really. So that was it. So we'll be finishing up with more interviews soon, and then we'll be writing a final report, which we'll make available to folks. That's it.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Arthur and Tatiana. It's really reassuring to hear that direct response from the actual farmers using the urine as fertilizer. So next up, we have a presentation from Renaud de Looze from France. He will be presenting on interest in an average NPK value of urine, calculated and measured in particular by the Rich Earth Institute. Need to balance urine with potassium and bring humus to the soil, and simple rules for applying urine in the garden. A bit about Renaud. Renaud de Looze studied at the Polytechnic University of Brussels. In 1995, he founded the Palmeraie des Alpes, a nursery in Isère in France. He has always experimented with techniques for recycling organic waste and wastewater as fertilizer in the garden and agricultural field. In 2016, following his investigations, he wrote a book. This is a test of my French, L'urine de l'or liquide au jardin, which explains how urine can be used as an effective and natural fertilizer. So here's a presentation from Renaud.
Okay, everybody, I'm very glad to introduce you, Mr. Renaud de Looze, the author of those.
Share screen. Sorry, guys. Here we are.
Okay, everybody, I'm very glad to introduce you, Mr. Renaud de Looze, the author of those two books, L'urine de l'or liquide au jardin and Urine Flüssiges Gold für den Garten. And he is he did a lot of research on urine usage, and his book is very interesting. So why is it important to know the NPK content of urine?
Okay, N stands for nitrogen, P for phosphorus, and K for potassium. Urine makes possible to return those elements taken from the last crops to the future crops.
Is it really important to know the content of those famous NPKs?
Fertilization must be balanced. Any lack or excess of one of those elements can lead you to the opposite effect that you are looking for.
Okay, so is it NPK that makes it possible to obtain good yields?
No, actually, the first fuel for the plant is water. And so it means that you need to have at least water. And if you have enough water, enough warmth, enough heat, enough light, then you can start to think about to fertilize your crop.
Okay, what about carbon?
Okay, carbon is the most important thing for the plant, and it's provided by the atmosphere. Plants will make photosynthesis with carbon coming from the air, combined with water from the roots.
So if the carbon dioxide is from the air, why is it important to put the carbon in the soil?
To have a good soil, it means to have a good humus. Humus, it's come from the decomposition of crop residues, compost, even feces. So to have carbon in the soil, it's important for the fauna of the soil.
Can you summarize?
Carbon is provided by the atmosphere, water also by the atmosphere and the rain, etc. But the NPK elements and the other elements that we will see later are provided by urine of the animals. And that's the reason why is it so important to know the content of urine, because we don't want to have an excess or a lack of one of those elements.
Okay, and why to focus on urine and not on feces?
Because the urine, I mean, both urine and feces contain the result of the digestion of the crops that we have eaten. But the urine contains 80% of those minerals crop.
Okay, is all urine has the same value, or does it change?
Okay. So it was the difficulty today to have a standard urine content. And that's the reason why I have calculated on a Western-based diet the content of an average urine. And this content is about 6 grams of nitrogen, 1 gram of phosphorus. When I say phosphorus, I mean P2O5, and 2 grams of potassium, which I mean K2O, to be conform to the standard, I mean, universal standard of fertilizer.
Yeah, and this is per liters of urine collected. And how much urine can be applied?
An organic standard is about 18 grams of nitrogen per square meter. So it means between 1 to 3 liters of urine per square meter.
That's right. Yes, that's what I'm using in the garden, and it's perfect. And if urine is so good, is it a complete fertilizer, or we shall add something?
It is not. Urine is a good fertilizer containing nitrogen and phosphorus. There is a lack of potassium, and potassium is a very important element, as important as nitrogen. So we have to complete. We have many ways to complete the urine. You can use compost, and you can use wood ashes.
How to do it?
To complete the content of urine, obvious one is compost, because compost will bring potassium, calcium, and humus, as we said before, which is important for the soil. If you don't have any compost, you can use the crop residues and add with ashes.
Hear that it's a good fertilizer. Can you explain?
Wood ashes. What you must know is the word potassium comes from pot ashes, because the ancient used ashes, the pot ashes, to wash their clothes. So they knew there were elements in the ashes.
Okay, can we put a lot of ashes?
No, because it's a very, very effective fertilizer, 10 times more concentrated than urine in terms of elements. So when we have 1 liter of urine, we will add only 10% of ashes.
Okay, that's quite interesting. So, and today, most farmers use synthetic urea compared to urine. Why is that, and how can they compare?
Okay, the urea's fertilizer is the best-selling fertilizer in the world, and it contains about 46% of urea. So it's about 100 times more stronger than urine.
Okay, so urine is a weak fertilizer, or a diluted fertilizer, we could say.
Urine actually is a weak fertilizer that you can compare to compost, manure, because we are turning about 1% of elements, you see. And when you go with blood meal, ashes, and feathers meal, then you go to 10% of elements. And when you go to synthetic or mineral fertilizer, commercial fertilizer, you go up to 30%, 40%. So you see that urine is one of the weak fertilizer, but it's effective.
Wait, we should say diluted because it's strong, but it is diluted somehow.
Yes, yes, weak, but still too strong to be applied continuously.
Too concentrated for a 100% applications. What are the precautions what not to do when using urine?
So as I said before, NPK of urine is not well balanced. It must be implemented with potassium, for instance, and sometimes also with calcium. But on the other side, in urine, you have too much salt. When I say salt, I mean sea salt or cooking salt, which contains a lot of sodium. So my advice would say that eat less salty.
Okay, so that's what I'm doing. I cook without salt. So I really suggest everyone to learn French and buy this book, or learn German, which I am not able yet, and buy the German version. And Renaud's book is quite interesting because there are deep explanation of everything with quantified dosage. So he's explaining how much to put on every type of crops. And this is a very good job from you.
Okay.
If anyone has a question, Renaud is a very knowledgeable person with more than 10 years of experience and thought on urine usage. So it's the right time to ask your question.
Okay, that was a wonderful presentation from Renaud and Robert. And actually coming up next, we have a presentation from Robert Cossette himself. The title of this presentation is The Solar Dripper Evolutions and 2021 Taste Tests. Robert is an engineer and eco-entrepreneur born in Montreal, Canada, and he now lives in France and is the inventor of the Oriaz Solar Dripper. So Robert, if you're here, feel free to share your screen and go ahead.
So thank you, everyone. I'm pleased to present to you the Oriaz Symbio method, which is standing for symbiotic. And as you know, many publication explains the use and benefits of urine for fertilizing. And this application has an outstanding ecological benefits for plants. And I won't list all of them, but the new subject that I looked at this year was the greenhouse gas balance, which we can improve by about 11% if we count the emission for classical sanitation and production of fertilizer and lack of absorption in CO2, because we can improve the absorption of plant with CO2. So the solar dripper is a very simple watering system that consists of a regulator and a cone that goes in your plant. So it's very easy to install, and it drives water directly into your plant and automatically by a conversion of the thermal cycles. The application of water is located into the ground precisely in the root system. So it's more precise, there's less evaporation. The flow of water is synchronized with the evapotranspiration. And for urine application, there's another feature that is very interesting, is the oxygenation of the soil. So the root zone, because of the gap between the cone and the post, it permits air to flow through, and this oxygenated zone permits the development of beneficial nitrifying microorganisms. The other subject that many presentation had mentioned, the problem of clogging, is resolved with the solar dripper because it is 10 times more tolerant compared to conventional dripper system. As you can see, there are holes on the systems, and large particle and biofilm can flow through, and particles over 2 millimeter flow through. So struvite deposit are not causing dysfunction of the system, and we can use it for more than 5 years. To make the urine application is straightforward. We just have to dilute urine in the bottle. So we do this directly at a rate, we've tested many rates from 2% to 25%, even 100% in some case. The first corn we grew was very successful. So I was amazed. At the beginning, I was a bit fearful because it's a taboo subject, and I wondered if it was going to be smelly, the plant would die, or you can imagine anything. That was 4 years ago. But it turned out I had excellent crop and excellent taste of my my corn. So I continue my test indoor using urine for fertilizing my home plants, my plants in the office, and it turned out to work very well as well. And even the plant flowered. They turned greener, shinier, and they flowered. So it's a process that works very well. I tried it for corn, and again, for corn, we can make a very precise application, and we can calculate the quantity of urine per plant, which is extremely precise, because we don't have a change of flow from dripper to dripper compared to inline drippers, which clog at different rates and create a diversion of the amount of fertilizer and water that each plant will receive. So for tomatoes, it was amazing. 3 years ago, I started growing tomatoes, and it turned out my tomatoes were sweeter. They were so abundant. it was a really perfect result with tomatoes. So I brought my tomatoes to the World Water Week in Stockholm 2 years ago for people to taste it, and it was a very fun experience. I was located just next to the Susanna stand in Stockholm, and people were eating our tomatoes and making comment, knowing that it was with fertilized with urine, because I had my poster, my roll-ups installed in the display. So I did a lot of those demonstration, even in retail stores. This picture was taken in Migros stores in Geneva. It's one of my retail points. So I wanted the customer to try tomatoes that were grown with urine. And they were participating with a lot of enthusiasm. And it's a really interesting thing to see that people are not shy, and educated, rich people, and they can understand it as a great value. And I found that I was really supported by customer, and it's not a taboo subject anymore. I did the same thing in Dijon during a show for non-connected sanitation system, and people were eating my tomatoes with a lot of fun. And it turned out that 95% of people are ready to try it, and they are amazed by the discovery. So I encourage all people who are interested to promote this idea, to really invite people to taste the product, because it is amazingly good. I'll share a link of a video of the taste online, the live taste test we did, and you will see people commenting their the taste of the tomatoes. We've measured the sugar content of the tomatoes using a refractometer, a Brix refractometer like this. We can put a few drops of tomato juice and measure the sugar content of those tomatoes, and they reach 12.2 Brix degrees, which is extremely high. I never had such tasteful tomatoes. In previous test, we had 11-degree Brix with synthetic fertilizer, which was very good, but we had even better with urine. So now I figure there's absolutely no interest in using synthetic fertilizer. This year, we have applied the urine on sunflower, giant sunflower, which grew very well. They grew 4 meters tall. And I also made some squash. So we have a very delicious squash to eat. And we also did a taste test of squash that I grew with my salad ripper and urine application and squash from the store. And the same recipe ended up having a much better taste product with urine fertilizer. So don't be shy anymore. There's a trick that I'm using for over extra use of extra amount of urine that I collect, because I'm collecting on a daily basis, and I try to use it on a daily basis as well. So during fall and winter, because my garden doesn't need fertilizing at all, I simply spread the urine under conifer trees. So those trees will grow faster and absorb more carbon dioxide. And I don't have a dog, so some people walk their dog and collect their poo. I walk myself and I spread my pee, and it's a fun fun thing to do, to walk on the forest or walk around. And you need to define a zone that is sufficiently large not to over fertilize. And if you are in the realistic dosage, it's very beneficial for the plants, and our conifer grew fantastically well. The application is very easy. You simply dilute it, and you can apply occasionally up to 25% dilution. or you can do it regularly or almost all the time from 2 to 5% dilution. The urine content of nutrient, I'm basing my calculation on Renaud's figure, which are exactly the same as Richard Institute figure. AB has communicated me a test they did about 10 years ago, and the average were almost exactly the same. And it is really interesting information to see that it is constant and it is sufficiently stable to use those number as a application reference. For the dosage of the solid report, we simply mix a quantity of urine that you can pour using a funnel. You can measure by quantity or by weight using a small balance. And for a year now, I'm using a new procedure, which is much faster. It's a drench gun. So this gun picks a quantity of urine and I pour the same quantity in a bottle and it goes very fast. I don't touch anything. This one is new. That's why I don't mind touching it. So you can pick and pour dozens of bottles once after each other, and it's very precise because you will have every time the proper dilution. And I now suggest to use this if you want to do a large garden. For the urine collection, it's super simple as well. I've collected 2 tons of urine like this. So for men, we can pee directly in those reused soft drink or juice bottle. You unscrew the cap, you pee, and you screw the cap, and then you transport it either to the garden or to trees where you would simply spread the in a managed way for a surface application under trees. So it looks like this in the washroom. The investment is not even $10. So you can buy or not a cute bin, but you can use anything you already have in hand. And for women also, there are many collectors, and we are working on this device that will be finished in about a year. But there are many urine collectors for females, and many of our friends are doing it at home. So that's what it looks like in the garden. I pick and pour urine in bottles. And our product, we now have a product to promote an alternative for chemical fertilizer. So we suggest people to buy our system with some explanations, and they don't need to buy fertilizer for their life, because once they understand it has this equivalent value or even better value than chemical fertilizer, they have this solution. So it comes with a small guide, a printed guide, and I even printed tested by Richard Institute. And I also printed the possibility to use Orin, because we can apply Orin. We can even apply, of course, synthetic fertilizer. I did it for 10 years, more than 10 years before I knew my urine was even better. So this is the information. And we sell complete kits for large scale demonstration garden. And this is what you can use eventually if you want to organize a similar garden than what I'm using. And I can communicate with partners or people that would need to or want to do this. And we can ship, and we will ship a large pallet next week to Montreal. And we start exporting this solution worldwide.
That's great. Thank you, Robert, for your presentation.
Okay.
exceeded the limit of our time here, but
I'm sorry. So just a last comment that the idea is not to be better than you in term of using urine. We have to be better together, and we need to be better with each other in using urine. So
that's
thank
true.
you.
Yeah, I would agree. We're trying to advance our techniques and methodologies in ways that just make sense, less waste overall.
That's right.
So yeah, thank you, Robert.